This country's not going to be saved from the top because that's where all the rot is. It's too deep. It's going to be saved from the grassroots.
Good morning, folks. It's the 24th of June, and I can say good morning here, but of course those friends who are joining us from Canada will be saying good evening because we have a big time difference. However, much else is the same. We're seeing the same things happening in both countries, both Canada and Australia, and many other Western countries as well. So everything that we say here, I think you should take into account no matter where you're watching from. It seems to be the thing that the Western world is being removed from its heritage, and there are reasons for that. Okay, so today we're joined by Robert in Canada. Good morning, Robert.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Still the 23rd of June.
Oh, a day behind. André as well, André Meloche. How are you going?
Yes, good. I'm doing fine. Good morning to you.
Very good. And my compatriot over in Western Australia, Daniel. How you going, mate?
Oh, good, mate. Glad to be here.
That's good. Okay, today, I think we might have a little bit of a look at the most recent news, which, of course, is Keir Starmer's decided to, well, not decided to. I think he's been forced out of position. Yeah, interesting developments over there in the UK, and yeah, that's sort of how it goes. So, Robert, would you like to make mention of what you've been listening to recently?
Well, Keir Starmer is supposed to have resigned as Prime Minister, but I read today that he is actually still sitting as the chairman of the Council of Ministers, and that he has an ambition to complete or further the preparations for war financing, for military financing, which he was already involved in. So he's not quite a lame duck. He's still got projects that he's working on, and he's apparently allowed to do this, even though he has resigned. Resignation has a strange meaning sometimes, I guess. Anyway, I was thinking that Keir Starmer was elected just less than 2 years ago, I think, with his huge majority, and already his government is falling apart. There were 1,500 local elections recently in the UK, and 1,500 that the Labour Party lost. And that's why the members of Parliament are so nervous, because they're afraid they're going to be made extinct in the next election. So they're taking it out on Keir Starmer. But it's very strange how we are going from more and more extreme and brief changes in politics. I think that's just a reflection of the fact that people want to change things. They want to see an improvement, but they have no mechanism whereby to do it. So they're thrashing around, going from one group to another, hoping somebody will do something, but I think with very little hope, because anybody who has experience of politics knows that the extremes are not extremes of policy. The policy seems to override elections and continue through whatever government is elected. So it's exactly what we've seen in the United States with Donald Trump. You know, all the high hopes that he raised among people. And what does he do? Right away, he starts a war when he's promised specifically that there will be no more wars. So the betrayal of the population is so obvious now that you'd think there'd be some form of revolt. But there's, of course, a violent revolt is not going to accomplish anything. So we need to have some mechanisms whereby the population can actually exert control over these politicians who are not respecting their commitments and not even working in the interests of the country often. They're working in the interests of international organizations, international finance, global things in general, the World Economic Forum, you know, all these influences coming into play, but they are not for the benefit of the national populations. And we have to develop some mechanism whereby the people of a country can actually gain some control over the policy emanating from government.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because I was watching something this morning where Keir Starmer was talking about his comments on Israel and their invasion into Lebanon, and trying to, on the pretext of Hamas, he's absolutely for it, and he's despite the devastation to another country who they're not really at war with. They're at war with a population that is supposedly residing within inside it. But so he's still going to be in the military. So a lot of the pushback, of course, that I saw from Keir Starmer is on that issue. It's regarding Palestine and the treatment over there and the genocide. And yet they're still keeping him on in that position. So what exactly are they changing? They're not changing anything except the face that they're putting up front. If he's still going to be in the ministry, then they're obviously not going to change what they're actually doing. Doesn't seem to be a part of it. Daniel, I'm going to skip to you rather than André just at this moment, because Rob, you were saying what can they actually do about it? If we're not actually accountable, or if they're saying they're accountable by removing the leader and not actually changing anything. You brought up something when we were talking earlier this morning regarding the electors' demand. Would you like to give us a bit of a lowdown on that?
Sure. So the idea of the electors' demand is whereby the citizenry actually agree to something that they do want, hence the demand, and then submit that demand in writing to their government. And because the demands are presented in writing to their government, a failure from the government to do so is just a failure of government, and they should all be voted out at that point. So one of the documents when I went to Murdoch University and I was documenting the Douglas Social Credit Special Collections is this document that's showing up on the screen right now. During the initial push for Douglas Social Credit here in Western Australia, and I'm assuming that would have been Australia-wide and probably worldwide for the Anglosphere where Douglas Social Credit was popular back in the day, these were the three initial points, because we have so many social issues, political issues, economic issues. They all stem from the single source point of the financial system. And within the financial system, this is what they were thinking about in 1934 as a printed demand. So the first one was whereby the cash credits of the nation are to be equal with the consumable goods within that nation. Number two was that new production was to be financed by new credits, not from savings, because when you save your money and then reinvest it, you're regenerating a new set of costs. And in reality, it goes from purchasing power to becoming capital. And it's from the previous cycle of production. And that the third, and it's the most important, or not the most important, but very important, is that the wage and salary system is to be replaced by the national dividend, because we associate work with incomes. And this, in the face of mechanization, digitization, automation, advanced control, and all these other, especially with the AI coming down the pipeline again now, it's the same problem they had back then. A lot of jobs, manual labor jobs, were replaced by a machine. And what was that individual to do? How does one support themselves when they've lost their job, which gives them access to an income? And as I've said before on this stream, the problem isn't unemployment. The problem is unemployment. Because I've just recently been on travels, and I do explain it to people. Imagine you as an individual were earning, say, $85,000 Australian per year. Technological advancements comes along and throws your job into the gutter. But if you retain that $85,000 purchasing power for your mortgage, your car, to look after your family, put shoes on your feet, where is the problem? There actually isn't one. And that's the point. As long as there is a steady flow of income to match the flow of production, we have more a sane system, because that's the problem most people are seeing coming down the pipeline. We showed a video not too long ago on this stream of, I think it was Eric Schmidt being booed at a university when he was talking up the benefits of AI when all these students can see, well, I'm going to be losing that job. I've just taken the $100,000 in debt to get my degree. In a few years' time, that's not going to be there. So how do I pay my debts? So they're all very upset, but they're much like the Luddites, where the new looming machines came in for the textiles, and they've come along and they've, you know, thrown spanners into the works just to make sure that the machine isn't working. So the machine is quite great in regards to labor saving. It's what it's there for. But again, as per usual, we associate work with income. And this is something as a worldwide, we have to change our thinking and our expectations of associating work with income, simply because of the effects of the machine and its ability to produce without a significant proportion of human labor.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't wait for the day when all my mundane work is done by a machine. It frees me up to do things I want to do. Yeah, that's supposed to be the ideal of it. When you were talking there, I actually made a point there. We were talking about we need a mechanism. Obviously, the electors' demand is one of those things we should be discussing and talking about, because we don't just want to change the faces; we actually want to control the policies. And how do we actually get an ethical response from our elected representatives when they do something like that? You know, there's certainly no ethics involved in that.
So I just want to interrupt you there.
Yep.
Sorry. So you have the mechanism of the electors' demand for the population to say what we do want. There's the other potential of a mechanism, and I believe it's in Switzerland and in some states of the United States, they also have it. It's referred to as the veto vote, where there is the idea that freedom actually exists in the power to say no, as opposed to demanding something. So the other idea is, if policy or legislation is coming down the pipeline, the population should be able to get together and actually say, no, we don't want this. We should veto that legislation or law coming down the pipeline. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, that's good. What you're talking about there is CIR&R, or citizen-initiated referenda and recall, which has been pushed. Was pushed in the 90s, early 90s, I think, around Australia a bit. But it also was in North Sydney. Ted Mack, he started out as a councillor. He went to state politics and then went to federal politics. And that was his basic platform. I believe North Sydney actually had a policy of CIR, or initiated referenda there, whereby if enough of the ratepayers brought something up, it had to be dealt with. Yeah, so they're the things we need to look at. So it really comes back down to, you know, why we actually do something and what we expect out of it. And from that ethical point of view, I guess, André, that's your forte, your cup of tea, and whether you'd like to make comment about anything we've just said, or a bit about that, how we don't seem to we seem to get something that is a change in face, but no change in the actual policy, and they seem to be okay with that.
Well, we can start maybe just to roll back a couple of years ago with David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, the unbearable Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, and then Keith Starmer. It seems that they are trying to beat a record. You know, who will be prime minister the shortest period. They understand, and notice something in Europe now. You have a lot of minority government or a lot of coalition. They are having a hard time having a majority, or not like in Canada. You know, you're elected as a minority government and you steal the majority. But they have minority government or they have coalition. And I think Robert was mentioning the fact that they are replaced very, very much faster, because there's no ethics in their policies or even in their election. The fact that we are facing those very fragile government shows the fragility of the Western civilization, not only the Commonwealth, but you see this in Europe and you see this in many countries. I refer, for example, to the last election last year in Romania, where Călin Georgescu was the favorite, and he was prosecuted. The election was invalidated by the European Union. And they even admitted that they would interfere in the electoral process because they didn't like Călin Georgescu. Was the same thing with Viktor Orban in Hungary. So if we want to have accountability, we need we need to be able to use recall or repeal law. They have this in Saskatchewan. They don't like a policy, they can ask for a referendum, and with this referendum, they can repeal a law that they do not like or they do not agree with. We have to pressure MPs. The big problem is most of them, they don't answer. There was a quote from Mark Carney, or I think I'm not even sure if it was a off microphone, but it was a hot mic. And somebody asked him about the MPs. I think it was two days ago. He said MPs are just good for voting with the government, and it created an outrage. People and were saying, you know, those 343 MPs, they are not. They don't have any power. It's party policy, and they implement something that comes from above. How do we untangle this? I think Daniel was mentioning, you know, having this procedure where you keep people accountable. The problem is they never answer, and even if they answer, it will always be what I call a diplomatic answer. Oh, thank you for your letter. We acknowledge your concern. Blah 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 blah, and then after that, they don't do nothing. The procedure needs teeth. We have to be able to fire them if we want. That should be in a constitution, and we can think about the impeachment procedure in the United States. I'm not a fan of the American Constitution, but they have this impeachment procedure. They used it abundantly and tried to remove Trump from power in his first term. It did not work, but they still have it. And let's remember Richard Nixon, 1974 or 75, I think, when he had to resign. It is possible to do it, but how do we do it? Through education, and we have to make sure that people understand the structure of a procedure like this. It's not that easy. Many people are just disengaged politically, or politically illiterate. They don't even understand what MPs are doing. They're supposed to represent their constituent, and it is not what is happening. So, in my opinion, I think that educating the people is one key avenue. But we need also one thing: if we have a vision of how we would implement, for example, the doctrine of Douglas, we need a real mission. We need a vision of it. What would be, for example, a country in 2050? We can refer to the World Earth Economic Forum. They have visions and policies. We refer to the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. We don't, whether we like it or not, they have structure with policies and then strategy to implement them. We have to work together to build this. And after that, we can maybe try to influence 15% of the population. I'm sorry to say this, the rest will follow.
Yeah. Yep. It's a big drama that we don't have the willingness of the population to actually start looking at this sort of stuff. They'll respond in a visceral way to prompts or false flags or whatever it is that is being put forth to keep us busy, not looking at the real issue, but to actually get down to the more important things. There's a quote here by Dr. Oliver Haydorn that we put up earlier. The purpose of true economic association is twofold. A, to deliver the goods and services which individuals desire, and B, to do this with the least amount of trouble to anyone. Now, that comes from social credit economics. But that's the sort of vision, or that's the sort of discussion that needs to be had. We need to come back to the very basics of what things are actually for, why we actually do something. And we sort of said that a little bit with AI. What is the purpose of AI? But it's also, what is the purpose of politics? What is the purpose of our political representative? They're there to be a representative. That's all the key words in their name. And if they're not actually representing the population that supposedly voted for them, then we need to go back to basics and say, well, it's obviously not working. Why isn't it working? Are we not putting enough effort in? And I would suggest that that's probably the case. The majority of the population is just asleep from election to election. That brings me to a bit of a chat about the budget. I'm not going to make too much about it, but our Prime Minister came to power with a heap of promises. I think he's broke 7 of them. He's broken a couple more now. One of them that he wasn't going to side with the Greens and push stuff through. Well, his big push to get housing into the hands of the average punter supposedly is removing capital gains tax, and they've just had their budget handed down, and this is what it's supposed to do. But there's a number of people that are very critical of it. It's quite interesting. In the last year, 19% of people felt negatively about their life this year. It's now up to 30% who feel negatively. 70% of Australian homeowners who were going to buy an investment property as an investment for their superannuation or self-managed funds are now not going to. And people who think they can save their way to a mortgage to actually buy a house, to get a loan, has dropped from 38% to 24%. This is on the basis of this current budget that they're putting down and the bleak economic future we've got at the moment. So that's just a bit of an overview of percentages. Again, that's all from the Herald Sun, so take it as you will. But there's other talk as well that the actual mechanism that's been floated at the moment with the capital gains tax would mean that big investment or global corporations will now be able to invest much more favourably in housing properties here in Australia than the average punter will. So I just find that a bit, that seems to be pushing the same thing as the WEF, the World Economic Forum, where they say you will own nothing. It seems to be that's what they're pushing for, but that's my opinion. David Williams, who's best known for rescuing tassel, which is one of our big fish processors here in Tassie. He rescued them from receivership, so he's a fairly switched on businessman. He's nothing but scathing. He said, and I'll quote it, "A fundamental lack of understanding about how long it takes to build a company and to bring a product to market." And he's talking there about the impacts of the budget and the what it's going to do. He basically says that the policy is going to push all offshore, or push all startups offshore. And that's from a David Lynch article, also in the Herald Sun. But, there's a lot of people who are fairly critical of what they're doing. And they went to the polls saying that they wouldn't do anything to negative gearing or GST or, so as I said, I think they're up to 7 different policies now that they've totally backflipped on, and they just have to. It's not lies. And if you were to leave George Orwell's quote, "Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful, murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind." I think that's fairly apt for what's going on. That's our budget, and there's a few other things happening as well. There's a lot of some. André, you mentioned the minorities in Europe. Well, we're seeing that here. Our 2 main parties are becoming minorities themselves. Their first preference vote polling is dropping, and one of the smaller parties, One Nation, is rising and rising to the point where they're almost ahead of the game of the others. And of course, they're copping a lot of flack. The leader, Pauline Hanson, for One Nation, has been criticised by our PM again for accepting money from Gina Rinehart, Australia's richest woman. She got nearly $2 million worth of plane or something so she can fly around. And yet, if you look into the figures of the party that he belongs to, we've got Richard Pratt donating X amount of, a couple of $1 million every election, and all the different organisations. And Harry Triggerbutt's firm, I'm trying to think, he's a billionaire property developer. He also donated close to 1.2 million over the last few years as well. So it's all right to throw stones, but you want to be very careful when you're living in a glass house, because you're doing the same thing. Robert, you had something else there you were going to bring up?
Well, with regard to members of Parliament, I used to work in the House of Commons and in Canada, and I learned that when new MPs are elected for the first time, they go to a course given by the principal clerk of the House, and he tells them what it means to be an MP and what their duties are as an MP. And what I saw was such a trivialization of the function. The MPs don't go in there with the idea that they have the power to make serious changes in society or to improve things. They go in there with the idea that all they have to do is correct administrative problems that their constituents have, like getting a passport situation cleared up. Or about the lowest I came across was a woman who wrote to her MP and asked if he could find a mate for her dog so that he could breed. This is the sort of thing that the MPs are getting involved in, and it's the major part of their work. I don't think they're concerned with the big issues of society, and that is definitely discouraged by the administration of the House of Commons. So, when there's a vote, the members are whipped into their seats to participate in the vote. Whipped like dogs, I guess, because they're controlled. They're not going there asking what their constituents' interests are and what they should do to pursue those interests. They're just responding to instructions from their party apparatus, and it's such a pathetic notion of democracy, of participation by the elected representatives in the major issues of society. It's just this dead weight of bureaucracy that has infiltrated the activities of the members of Parliament. I saw, the offices full of secretaries, and all day long they were just answering questions, trivial questions about administrative problems that constituents were having. And this was deemed to be the proper function of members of Parliament. I don't think this was the case 2 centuries ago. Members of Parliament had a more exalted notion of their functions than the ones we have today. But the ones we have today have settled into this very comfortable situation where they don't have to challenge anybody in power. It's safer not to. If you want to have a career in the future, you'd better not make too many waves because that will be noticed and you won't get the advancement that you probably are seeking. Some people don't seem to be concerned about that, but the majority certainly are. And it's just another aspect of this corruption of the conscience of society by careerism and seeking after higher income. If you're doing something for those purposes, to advance your career or to enhance your income, somehow this is regarded as being normal in our society. But it shouldn't be, because what is normal would be doing the right thing and acting truthfully, but this ethical standards are being eroded so quickly. And once, you get the impression that everybody's going down that road, it's pretty hard to resist it yourself, because you're going to be standing out as the only one who's not getting advantages out of the system. So it's a deterioration in the spiritual values of society, the ethics of society, that is very, very hard to recover from. And we've gone very far down that road. Sometimes you can light the idealism of youth and maybe get things restored a bit. I hope social credit would do that, because social credit is a great project. Social credit would overcome the problem of poverty amidst plenty. And I can't think of a worthier cause than that. And I think that if it was conveyed to young people in those terms, they might become interested in it and think it's worth promoting. But you have to have some kind of ethical structure in society. You have to have gratitude on the part of people for what they're getting. And every attempt seems to be made to undermine the sense of gratitude. If you have people coming into the country and automatically being given advantageous preferences for jobs and for medical care and dental care, whereas the population who have been born in the country and raised in the country, their parents have been there for many years or maybe generations, and yet they are being discriminated against. It's very taxing on your sense of gratitude when you see this happening. So I think this has got to be a deliberate policy designed to demoralize the population. And it's so vicious, it's so malicious, that unless people recognize it and stand up against it, we're going to go into a very dark period in our national histories. And it's late. The hour is late already. I would say if people are going to do something, they better attend to it quickly, because there's not going to be much left of the ethical capital of their country if they don't do something to recover it and to build it back.
Yeah, and we're seeing that. We're seeing the wake up of people. I'd say there's a positive in being discouraged or feeling left out, because it makes people think. It brings it to their forefront. And Daniel, you were talking earlier about Singapore. Something in Singapore. You want to that connects with that? Would you like to bring that up?
Yeah, sure. I'll just bring up the if you could bring up the news article for me. Yeah, only one in 10 young Singapore workers is engaged at work. They've come to realise that their job might be not so useful in society. Or I think it was Graeber. Was it Graeber? He wrote a book called Bullshit Jobs. Excuse the language, but that's what the title is. Many jobs are just there. They only exist to distribute wages. They're not actually providing something useful within society. But there is a small paragraph within this news article, and it says a concern raised was the AI incentive conflict, which refers to employees believing that the use of AI could reduce the need for their roles, making them resistant to it. That should be a blessing. Anything, whether it's mechanical or whether it's digital, if it can remove you from your job so you don't have to sit there and do the drudgery, why not? We seem to have a fear of leisure. This idea of having the time to do something as you please, when you please, as you need, is frightening, because I've just come back from travels across Western Australia. I went through 4 towns up north, Dongra, Cowbarry, Carnarvon, and Geraldton. I talked to people at the caravan parks that I'm staying at. I talk to the people going in and out of the supermarkets because I'm handing out flyers. I go to businesses, and they all seem genuinely quite concerned about this idea. Well, if I do get an income, what am I meant to be doing with my life? It seems a very, very curious thing. I mean, even when it comes to actual production, here in WA, we have a coal mining town called Collie. And I use it as an example whereby the rate of production of coal, I know coal's a dirty word in this country, but that's irrelevant for my example. But if the rate of production of coal and the rate of consumption, you could in fact build up a stockpile of coal whereby those actual people, digging in the hole, driving the trucks, and then conveyor belting it out to the power plant, You could build up a stockpile and not have those people actually working. But again, they're like, well, what would I do? Well, you could lay in bed for a week if you wanted to, go down to the beach for the next month if you wanted to. But the thing that I've learned from social credit and the doctrine of Douglas is that the primary goal of humanity is actually self-development, to take the time to improve oneself. And I'm not saying about being better than your neighbor, but I'm saying being better than yourself from yesterday. I mean, you could sit there and take the time to learn a language. You could sit there and take the time to learn some technical craft. I mean, if I had the opportunity, I would love to do some engineering myself. That was Douglas's line of work. It'd be very interesting to me. I mean, my own academic skills are not that great. I didn't finish high school, but if I didn't have to work all the time, I would quite enjoy the opportunity to go back to school, to learn something, and maybe use my skills to improve the world in some fashion. I'm orating social credit at the moment, and Douglas does in fact talk about how the majority of innovations don't actually come from people that are working. They come from people that have been released from the necessity of having to provide for themselves, and then they focus their energies elsewhere. If you look into the evidences of people who do in fact invent and create, they've basically all come from people that have been removed from the drudgery of work. So when people are we discussed it earlier, but when people are frightened about losing their jobs to AI or a new labor-saving machinery, it's not the unemployment that they necessarily fear. It's the fact that they're going to lose their income, and even again, in my travels, when I try to explain it to people, it becomes very difficult for them to even accept it as a possibility. Douglas did write, I'm trying to remember where he wrote it. It might have been in the book Social Credit, but things have seemed to crystallize that any change is undesirable, as opposed to, a change between good and change between bad. It's just crystallized into not changing at all. It all comes back again to a philosophy. I mean, even my own views of the world is that you got to try. You do not know the result of something unless you actually give it a go. So that's why I'm a big supporter of social credit, because I would like to see what the other side of the result would be if we actually did something in regards to in lines of social credit. It'd be a very curious thing, because I think, I'm trying to remember the names now. John Hargrave, he was the leader of the Green Shirts in England back in the day. I think it was the booklet from him. It was 101 questions on social credit. He believes that it'll be a bit like ducks going into water. Once you actually have that bit of freedom and you've been released from the necessity of work, it'll just become a natural response to do as you need and when as you please. But more importantly, I mean, even from my own views, I am of the belief that it's not the work that I'm refuting, because there are necessary things in work to do. I mean, I used to be a cleaner, clean toilets and mop floors. I used to work at the chicken factory delivering chicken. These things still need to be done because they actually provide a direct link to the quality of lives of others. But it's just the amount that I'm refuting. I'm not refuting the work outright. I'm refuting the amount necessary to provide any kind of standard of living. And that standard of living isn't necessarily what you do, because I do upset people when I say to them, nobody ever works hard for anything that they've got anymore. And they look at me as if to say, well, I work in a mine, I do a 12-hour day, or I drive a truck, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the shoes on your feet, someone else made them. If you look at the clothes on your back, someone else made them. The house that you live in, you didn't build it. The only thing you worked to get was the money necessary to purchase these things. And as we all, as social creditors know, and is now in fact a fact, money comes from nothing. Bank of England 2014 Q1 statement: every loan creates a deposit and every repayment of a loan destroys the deposit. So why are we working hard for something that comes from nothing? It's logical and reasonable to work hard for the delivery of something, cleaning a toilet, mopping a floor, delivering chicken. But working hard for money is a fool's errand. It's an absolute fool's errand. So I'll leave it at that at this point. I'm trying to remember where my train of thought was going. Where did we start with this, Neville?
Singapore. We started in Singapore. We've travelled all over the world.
The adoption. Yeah, again, these people are concerned about losing their jobs, but it's more about losing their income.
Yes. It's the leisure. You've got to have the leisure to explore new things. I mean, that's where all innovation and invention comes from. If you've got the time to sit back and look at something and say, I can make something better than that, or I can do that better. You've got to have the time to reflect and sit down and do it. My point with Singapore and the people there, it's only a little while ago when the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz started that the Singaporeans had to go on holiday midweek because there wasn't enough oil. So everybody was encouraged to take Wednesday off. I wonder how that's going. But I mean, that's a day of leisure and they're still coping. So these little things, the worry about AI taking their jobs, the fact that they've got to take a day off in the middle of the week where normally they'd be working, all these things point to the possibility of what we could have and should be a really good talking point for someone who's out there that knows something about the reasons why we can still survive. And it should be an eye-opener for people. This concept of leisure, I mean, that was a whole in point of the Industrial Revolution, or each of the revolutions that we've had in industrial terms. André, you were talking about the 4 industrial revolutions earlier. Would you like to comment on that or something else?
Well, yes, the 4 industrial revolution, they're all, a revolution is always proposed to improve life of people, or to bring an innovation in the life of people, which is fine if you don't leave people behind. The concept of Joseph Schumpeter, which is creative destruction, which means an innovation will supersede a previous process. The problem is that you leave millions of people behind. And like Daniel was saying, people, they will say no work, no income. And they associate work with income. Me, I say to people who tells me, I love my work. Okay, you love your shackles. Because if you would be free from this work, would you choose this work? Would you choose to do it? And I think now the new generation who are facing the AI challenge, they're starting to see that they will be replaced by algorithms, and what they will have contracted hundreds of $1,000s of student loans that they will never be able to repay. Imagine a governor would say, "Okay, no problem. We will just erase we will just erase your loan, like Biden wanted to do in 2019, just erasing all student loan." Yes, but you need the money for this. The financial system will not permit you to do this unless you are the president of the United States. But even then, it did not work because somebody will lose in this. And I think today we have maybe 4 or 5 classes, and every revolution pushed a class outside of power and to be replaced by another class, whether it is a younger generation. What is quite fascinating is that you have maybe four or five classes. The hyper class, which is very, very rich. We were talking about Elon Musk, Bill Gates, but you have also the high class, the high middle class, which would be liberal profession. Then Robert was mentioning MPs. In Canada, the beginning salary for an MP is $210,000. You just have to make 30 days of political campaign, and if you're elected, you win the jackpot without having to do much work. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of MPs who are in the House of Commons, and they're asking themselves what they're doing there. They're just piling money because they do not participate in the political debate. So today we are facing this challenge. Daniel mentioned something important. All those innovations would be part of the human heritage, and they should benefit to everybody up to a point that if we would go to the infinity, nobody would work because machine would work for us. The problem is machine now are starting to, quote unquote, think for us. And this is the danger of AI, because AI will create a society or a generation of addicted people to a machine. When the tool becomes too powerful, you have to readjust the process, meaning maybe more ethics, and also questioning what's the purpose of life. People are afraid to be lazy, because the first thing they have to think is, what am I going to do with my next 20, 30, or 40 years? And then they start to think about, oh, I'm starting to become old, and what comes after old time? It's death. So it brings a spiritual understanding, and they're afraid of that. That's why they're so attached to their work. I love my work means I don't have the capability to think or to innovate or to invent. It's not true. They do have it, but they were never educated in that way. I think Daniel is right. If they would be in a leisure society, which means it doesn't mean that they would not work, but they would maybe work differently, and they would slowly evolve toward what he was talking about. I think it's very, very, very just self-development. I think this is maybe a way to help people understand what could be the doctrine of Douglas. It's not about leisure; it's about self-development.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And when we're talking AI, of course, I was looking at, well, I've been looking at several articles on it. One AI construction, or one build that they're looking at doing, is enough to displace, 100,000 homes worth of electricity and water and everything else. And when it comes down to it, if you're displacing 100,000 homes, that's 300,000 people, assuming 3 people per home. What would those people, what would we be doing if we had that development for people? I can think, I know people who love being librarians, who love doing research. If AI is just a library and, somewhere to do research or to find information from, I'm sure out of those, 300,000 people, there'd be more than enough to give you 100 different librarians and 100 different research assistants and, all the things that go along with that. It becomes part of community, becomes part of society, and we'd actually be increasing the knowledge potential of society instead of decreasing it, which is what AI seems to do, because you retrieve it, you find a simple retrieval, and suddenly it's there. You don't have to remember. I see AI as destroying the potential for people. It has its benefits. There's always a possible benefit with it. Storage and retrieval of information, like a library, is probably a bit quicker. I still like paper myself, but if that's what it's for, then we've got to watch that it doesn't go the same way as television and become more of a degradation of society because of the continued amount of violence we see on it, the continued amount of pushed narratives rather than truth, and to me, like you say, it's the development of society we should be looking for. That is the development of the personal, your own personal growth, which is the ultimate function of society, I would have said, rather than just feed and clothe everybody. That sort of just seems a bit simple. We'll do a wrap up. Robert, have you got anything to wrap up with today?
Well, I thought that Danielle's report about the person who said if he got a dividend and didn't have to work for it, what would I do with my life or with my time? I thought that is so terrible, And what about the success of lotteries? Isn't that proof that people want to be free of the obligation to work? They go for these super prizes, and if they ever won one, they wouldn't be back at their job, their mundane job. Maybe a few who really don't have any creative instincts at all, but people want leisure in order to create things. I remember the stories of the farmers in Quebec, farmers in Alberta, where I'm from. and they used to make the most amazing innovations on their farms. They were always thinking of new ways to do things. Now, this is, I suppose, at a fairly primitive technological level, but they were creative people, and they had lots of leisure time during the winter, I guess, when there was less work on the farm, and they were innovating practically all the time, trying to find better ways to do things, more efficient processes, different devices to increase the efficiency of their operations. So this is a natural thing. I think if you take a little child, and that child is in any kind of reasonably interesting environment, they're not going to be asking, what can I do? They're going to be up doing things, because that's the natural proclivity of the human being. It wants to be doing something. It wants to be active. And if you're doing something that is self-chosen, people would say, if you get a given, you're going to be lazy. I think it'll be the opposite, because people who do things out of their own choice work at them much more intensely and than people who are being compelled to do something. There's a natural inborn characteristic of humans, I think, that they balk at being told to do something by another person if they don't have any option. And if they have an option, then they might go along with it. But it's something instinctive that you don't want to be the tool of the will of some other person. It's not in us. We're supposed to be individuals and following our own star, I guess. And I was in China once, and I saw a fellow wearing a T-shirt, and the T-shirt said, "Less work, more play." And I thought, goodness, these people are getting ahead of us. We better wake up. Because, China is not the grim, dictatorial country that it's often portrayed as. I mean, there's no tradition of political influence on government, really, but otherwise, people live quite normal lives, and they're quite cheerful, and they aspire to leisure. They aspire to all the things that we do, and it's just normal for people to want to do that, and we should be providing the environment in which they can. But as long as this money system has got a grip on us the way it has now, we're not going to be able to achieve that. So I agreed with that fellow in China. Let's aim for less work, more play. It's all good.
Sounds good to me. Daniel, you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I would say to the viewers that are watching, we'll put a link in the description below. There is an essay by Bertrand Russell called "In Praise of Idleness." And it very much covers the subject that we are discussing today, the benefits of not necessarily sitting around, but necessarily not having to work all the time. There is the one quote that is in there that I quite like. "The morality of work is the morality of slaves, and the modern world has no need of slavery." And I think that's very apt, especially in this day and age. So if you're a viewer, I highly recommend reading for the weekend. Take the time to give this a read over, because it's quite insightful. It's very insightful. Cheers.
Yeah, I think it's good that we've made our own slaves. That's the whole point of the Industrial Revolution. Our slaves are now mechanical, and we should be partaking in the leisure that they give us. André, a bit of a wrap up from you.
Yes, I like what Daniel was talking about, and me, I would refer to the middle age. Men in the middle age were working 145 days per year, and the rest it was leisure and holidays. And we've passed from the time of God to the time of man. And Bob was mentioning something. People are very ingenious, but they have to be together. If we are atomized by society, we're alone, we're isolated, we cannot face a problem. If we are collectively together and we're looking at one problem and we're thinking and exchanging ideas, we can develop a lot of our potential. And that's maybe the noble part of work, which I call labor. When you have 5, 6 people, 10 people around a problem, sometimes you will struggle, but you will solve the problem. You will not lose time if you're alone, because, put more brain together in a good environment. I've worked with many people, and my greatest pleasure was to work with those people and to make them work on one problem together. The challenge is always there, but they enjoyed it because it's human relationship.
Mm-hmm. And social credit's big on associations. Certainly, the league's always pushed the point of associations. When you get together, you can achieve greater things, as long as they're not controlled, as long as they're not being led in a direction, as long as they're a natural association which is governed by a set of aims that everybody agrees on. And again, like you say, if you've got something, if you're one person there who's got an idea to make something a bit better and he wants to spend a bit of time on it, the other people can virtually carry him for a short time while he does it. And they'll do so gladly if they can see a resultant possibility coming out of it that might make life easier yet again. And that is the point of getting together as a community. That is community. And on that note, I think this little community of 4 will probably be about to say goodbye, but I would suggest that to anyone listening out there, get out into your own community and start talking about these things, how you want more leisure and less work, more pay, a dividend. All those things are possible. The monetary system has been corrupted from what it originally was, so that's definitely one avenue that you need to start looking at. And like I've said before, there's plenty of material online here. If you come to our website, please take advantage of it. Please talk. That's very important. So thank you, fellows, for your interesting chat today. And see you next week. Cheerio.
This country's not going to be saved from the top, because that's where all the rotting. It's too deep. It's going to be saved from the grassroots.